Hi folks, Dr. Mary Warren here with Road Warrior Wellness. I am at the Women in Aviation Annual Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and today I have the distinct honor to be talking with Linda Markham, who's President and CEO of Cape Air. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
We'd like to hear your thoughts on some things that are important to the aviation industry and to people who are not in the aviation industry who don't know what you know. And my areas of interest are how you see safety and what's been happening in the industry, and particularly with Cape Air over the last couple of years, safety. And then second of all, scheduling, timetables, deadlines, because as an airline, obviously you have multiple layers of logistics that include deadlines, and you're very deadline driven, and all of your customers appreciate that.
Right.
We know that. And then last of all, because it's my wheelhouse and I love it, and I always want to hear from people because your unique perspectives are your own in your businesses, and that is health and wellness and where you are and where you've been the last couple of years, and maybe even what you see in the future. So talk to us about some of those things.
Yeah, so, it was 2 years ago, almost to the day, that we were in Women in Aviation in Orlando.
Yes.
And COVID was just on, we were just starting to hear about it. And before I left the office from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, I brought a small team together and I said, we're going to be the COVID task force. We're going to meet weekly. We're going to see how this plays out, but we need to be prepared for what may come. And when I came back from Women in Aviation in Orlando, already I was starting to see the impact of the very start of COVID on my airplane back, where they were blocking the middle seat already. They didn't say anything on the airline, the major airlines, but they were starting to block middle seats. So there was more conversation happening about this. So at Cape Air, we quickly had to get together and say, okay, what do we need to do to protect our employees, to protect our communities and our customers? And we started to allow everybody who was non-essential personnel, to work remotely.
Wonderful.
So all the people that had to come into the office, we wanted to keep them as safe as possible. And we thought by not having everybody in the office every day, they would have less exposure to COVID. So we did that. And we were mandated by law that we had to continue to fly. So it wasn't like we could seize our entire operation, our airline operation. So
I don't know that people know this. And I think that's a fascinating point.
Yeah. So the government said we had to continue to fly, and we did.
And tell our listeners a little bit about the size of Cape Air and what aircraft you fly.
So we're a Part 135 operation, which means we are a 9-seat aircraft. And we have Cessna 402s. Mm-hmm. And then we also are integrating a brand new aircraft, which is a Tecnam P2012, into our operation as well. So going through this whole COVID, we were also in the process of integrating a brand new fleet type into the operation. So it posed a lot of challenges for training, because we were mindful of trying to bring people into the training department and have them be trained during COVID as well. And people were really anxious about it. People were anxious about traveling. People were anxious about their families, and people who had elderly parents, they wanted to continue to protect them. So we quickly put in a lot of Band-Aids at Cape Air, wearing masks, having sanitizers. We had to come up with protocol to clean our aircraft and make sure that it was on our website so our passengers knew and were aware, being really transparent with what we were doing.
Right.
And we have an open cockpit, so meaning if you're a passenger, you can see our pilot. And so it was really important to make sure that all of our customers saw our pilots wearing a face mask, and it was required to fly in our aircraft that passengers had to wear a face mask as well. And as you can imagine, there were challenges to that because some people didn't want to wear them.
Absolutely. And safety, from what we typically would think of in an airline scenario or in an aircraft, then took on multiple layers deep, because now, again, you're thinking of potentially the transmission of virus, again, taking viruses home to, either elderly parents or spousal units or whatever may be happening. So it definitely, I could see, would have safety complicated items that would have come up for you.
So the impact that had on, from a safety perspective, really the pandemic, from where I sit, was more about their overall mental health.
Yes.
And how they were coping with it. Because like I said, we had some people that were so anxious about contracting the virus that they were wanting to make sure that we had all of these protocols in place. A lot of people in training department did not want to have go into a simulator and sit in a simulator for hours with one student.
Sure.
So we had to come up with a lot of different protocols to make sure that people felt safe coming to work. But then we also thought, okay, there are some people that maybe don't feel comfortable with it, and we don't want to force them to come into work. We did not do any furloughs. And then what we did was we offered a voluntary medical leave. So anybody who wanted to take a leave of absence for a period of time because they did not feel comfortable coming to work, whether they had a vulnerable child or spouse or parent, someone that they were caring for, we allowed them to do that. And we did have some employees that took advantage of that.
Yeah.
So that was good. And then the misinformation that was coming out, and the information was coming out so quickly about COVID and about the seriousness of it, about how you can transmit it. And so keeping up our COVID task force, keeping up with all of the CDC recommendations became a real challenge to make sure we were disseminating information out as quickly as possible.
Right.
And so we came up with a newsletter that was electronic that could reach all of our employees at the same time, and we would put out the information as quickly as possible. And then we had a library of everything that we put out as well on our internal website.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I can see where having such huge safety impacts from COVID in the last couple of years would have really brought a lot of complications to your airline. Talk to us a little bit about scheduling, because we talked about that briefly as we met.
So scheduling, interestingly enough, in the very beginning with COVID, if you came down with it, the CDC recommendations were that you had to be out of work for 2 weeks.
Right.
And it wasn't
14 days.
It was 14 days, and there was no wiggle room with that. Even if you didn't have symptoms anymore, you were out for 14 days. So that put a lot of pressure on the airline, because when you had multiple pilots being out, and we had schedules that we had to fly, and people were out for weeks at a time, that really impacted and what we were looking at as far as scheduling. Mm-hmm. And we were at a point where some of our management pilots, which, they do fly, that they were pitching in and flying the line as well. So everyone was really supporting one another, and communities were pretty supportive where we could. Even though we were required to fly, where we could consolidate some of our flights, we would do that. Because our planes were so small, we were reluctant to filling them up completely. So we were trying to leave some space so passengers still felt comfortable flying. Sure. And many of the customers that were flying were really essential personnel as well. They were doctors, they were nurses, they were attorneys, people that had to go somewhere to meet with people, whether it was and there was no business trip. It was really more essential flying that we were doing.
And did you find that you had additional flights that you employed because of either the physical distancing and maybe fewer employees working various either maintaining or base ops or whatever, or less?
Yeah, we had less flying than we did because the demand wasn't there.
Yes,
International travel wasn't happening. That was restricted, so people were not flying internationally. And I think people were really scared to fly.
Oh,
there was so much hype in the news about flying and getting on an airplane, and do they have filters, and is the airplane getting cleaned? And so there was a lot of that going on. And as you could see, my heart broke for flight attendants who, there would be physical altercations on airplanes because people didn't want to wear a mask, or people didn't believe, the pandemic was real. And so there became some violence on a lot of the airplanes as well, where then you'd have to get the police involved, and people were planes diverting and having to pull, people off of airplanes. Fortunate for us, many of our customers are repeat customers, and they know us and they like our airline. We're
brand loyalty.
Yes, and we're a regional airline. We're the largest commuter regional airline, but we do get a lot of repeat customers, and they were very good. I mean, we did not have any kind of those safety issues on our planes, which we were very fortunate.
Good. Well, a well-mannered group.
Well-mannered group.
Yes, that's good. And appreciative, I'm quite sure. And I think that's probably one of the attributes and benefits of being a small regional airline. You probably have a nice quality base in terms of people that do fly on your airline. And so, we've talked a lot about how COVID has impacted all of this. Where do you see your airline now relative to health and wellness? And obviously COVID is starting to be pretty much in the rearview mirror. So where do you find that both public and personal hygiene that has been improved is sticking? Do you think people are hanging on to some of this?
Yes,
I love
I
this.
do. I really
great.
do. I think people are very cognizant of the fact that not only with COVID, but the cold and flu season, and I think people got into very good habits.
Yes.
About, washing hands and using hand sanitizer. And
Yes.
so I have seen that really has changed. And even in using conference rooms, when you started to get back into a conference room and having meetings, that people would take out the wipes and wipe down the entire conference table.
Right.
So, yeah,
Good.
I'm definitely seeing that.
Good.
And we have an employee assistance program as well. And that is used and recommended for employees that have life stressors.
Right.
That may impact their personal life and their work life. And so we make that available at no charge to the employee.
Wonderful.
To use, and it's, completely confidential.
Well, and I started to get back to that. You mentioned a few minutes ago, too, what I like to refer to as, keeping your head in the game and the whole, where are you mentally, emotionally? And so where would you say your company is now in terms of the mental, emotional, and the stress-related effects of this whole?
I would say my head has always been in the game, just because I was, leading the COVID task force, and we had to make sure that we had good leadership that was
absolutely, top down,
delivering the messages that we needed to deliver. And today, I'd say that people are very grateful that they felt supported by the company, that we didn't furlough anybody. That when a lot of people were getting furloughed and losing their jobs, we did not do that.
Wonderful.
We supported them when they needed to take a leave to be with families, or if they felt like they just couldn't work. So I would say that people in general are very happy about the way that it was managed.
Good.
And unfortunately, we did lose an employee to COVID in our Montana region, and it was sad, and it really hit home to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think when you are a regional airline, where you're small. So tell us the number of employees.
We have about 750 employees.
Right. Yeah. Good. So it's like a big family.
And we're in 42 cities.
Yeah. So very select, and everyone probably knows one another, or they know of one another. And so, so the loss of life like that does feel, I'm sure, like a family member. Right. So, yeah. So good. I'm glad to hear. It's been my hope that personal and public hygiene would hang on. When this all came about a couple of years ago, I said, look, folks, I think hotels and airplanes are cleaner than they've ever been. Right. Public spaces have never been so clean. So let's not be afraid. Let's get out there and, get our lives.
And I travel quite a bit. And even, when I fly in the major airlines, when people get on planes, you see them take out their wipes. They're wiping down their TV tray, and they're wiping down their screens. And so I've really seen a pretty significant change in how people are behaving.
Yeah, I think this is great. I do. Well, Linda, thank you so much. And thank you for being one of our esteemed board members at Women in Aviation International. We appreciate what you do for us, and we really appreciate you taking the time today and this valuable information. We wish you a lot of continued success with your airline and blue skies.
Yes,
thank you, ma'am.